Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I work with a lot of individuals with attachment wounds. Today, I wanted to go over a topic regarding why an avoidant suddenly lost feelings. Why suddenly did they seem like they were really into the relationship, or they seemed like there was progress, and suddenly this completely flipped? And it is very frustrating for the partner. You can feel abandoned, you can feel lost, you can blame yourself. You can almost feel like you're not really sure what to do. Is this person going to come back? Is it something that could have been managed prior to this? Why did this happen, right? And I do want to say it's usually not your fault. People are dynamic and we can't always predict that this will happen. But knowing this can help reduce that possibility. So that's why I wanted to make this video today. And I'm going to go ahead and break it up into two sections. I'm going to break it up into the first section, where we're going to talk about why this happens, and then we're going to also talk about how to avoid this happening, because this is obviously not fun, right? This is not the best feeling to have your partner suddenly lose their attraction and attachment for you, right? Because that means that this relationship may end and that there's no closure, right? So the very first one, and this is not necessarily something that happens immediately, but it looks immediate to their partner. And I'll explain that later, but a lot of these actually are not necessarily suddenly. It just can look suddenly. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the boundaries of the relationship have eroded. So within the relationship, the boundaries between both of y'all are kind of slowly dissipating, to which the avoidant individual starts recognizing they're feeling very overwhelmed. They may be feeling disrespected. They may feel like, honestly, this might not even be true. And so that's why I want to emphasize it's not your fault, but avoidant individuals have a lot of trauma in this area. But often they may feel like they were tricked. And so they may feel like the boundaries were eroded. And suddenly when they notice, oh, wow, these boundaries are really, not as prominent as they used to be, was I tricked? Was this something I didn't realize? And that's why it kind of looks like it's sudden, because for them, it's like, oh my God, like what happened? And their knee-jerk reaction is subconsciously to suppress their feelings. But sometimes what also can happen is these boundaries that are eroding are actually unhealthy. So the boundaries should be there. So if their partner is an anxious or fearful avoidant leaning anxious, what happens is that partner crosses those boundaries throughout the relationship unknowingly, because the dynamic, unfortunately, is dismissive avoidant individuals or fearful avoidant leaning dismissive. They don't always know how to set the proper boundary without saying something extremely negative. And so when the relationship progresses, they stop talking in that very negative tone because they care about you more. So let me give an example so that I can paint this picture for y'all. It's almost like, maybe before they would say, no, I don't want to do that. Stop telling me what to do. I don't like being told what to do. And a lot of avoidants do not like being told what to do. It's very, very annoying. And I know that word is harsh, but that's just how it feels. And anybody who's an avoidant just understands what that is, right? And so because they admire and care about you more, they may not want to talk as harsh to you as much. So they may say it in a more soft way. But unfortunately, anxious and fearful avoidant who are leaning anxious, they are subconsciously, they don't mean it, but they're more comfortable crossing boundaries because they don't set boundaries for themselves. So, a lot of these individuals, they do a lot for other people and they get burned out very easily, anxious particularly, but also fearful avoidant. And so they don't have the understanding of setting boundaries. And so they cross boundaries within themselves and within their partner. Avoidants are the other way around. Boundaries are pretty strict for them. So now that you're crossing those boundaries, it feels very disrespectful. But because they're not saying it as harsh, the partner, the anxious or fearful, does not understand that this is not something to be done. So this dynamic starts creating a struggle where the anxious individual and the fearful avoidant individual, they are the anxious leaning one, they're almost pushing the avoidant into ways that the avoidant is feeling controlled and nagged and uncomfortable, right? And these boundaries are making the avoidant feel very suffocated and unhappy. And so what ends up happening is sometimes it can be sudden where the avoidant realizes, wait a second, like, what is going on? I can't let this happen anymore. I feel controlled. I feel lost. This person doesn't respect me. I'm gone, right? Or I can't feel my feelings anymore. After, realizing how long this has been going on, I can't do this anymore. That's how they feel. Or it can be that they've been feeling this way, but they've been in denial of it because they do care about you and they don't want to hurt you. And they're not sure how to word it where they can set those boundaries again, right? And so that's why the feelings are suddenly lost, because they're battling resentment simultaneously to trying to set this boundary. So I hope that makes sense. The next one is that both of y'all, but particularly their partner, neglects other areas of their life. So it's almost like an individual. This happens a lot with couples that are a little bit more codependent. They're codependent in most dynamics, but particularly in romantic relationships, to where their interests outside of the relationship are starting to blend into their relationship. I'm going to give an example of how this typically starts, and then we can process other examples as well, or we can just process that one example. This is very common that I see, and it's unfortunate because as a therapist, I can't necessarily tell patients, don't do that. It's going to create issues. I can't tell them what to do. I can more so just say, what is the reason that you're, have a sudden change in your behavior? I noticed X, Y, and Z. I noticed for the last couple months, this has been an interest. Why has that interest shifted to something that your partner is now interested in? Is there a reason that you're trying to manage your own self to match your partner's needs or their desires? Do you feel like you can lose them otherwise? Like, I can say it like that, but I can't say, hey, if you do that, your partner might run, right? And so in a couples session, if I'm trying to figure out this dynamic, I can't directly say, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and then you guys will be good. I can't do that. Would be awesome if I could, but I just can't, right? Because part of the job is so I can process, so they can pick up these skills for themselves. I'm not going to always be there for them, so they got to learn it themselves. I can't spoon feed it to them. So I'm going to give examples, and I want you guys to think about it, and then I'll tell you what I think, okay? So let's say we have an example of a female anxious preoccupied individual. Now, anxious preoccupied are not always female. It's just an example, okay? And we have a dismissive avoidant male. And I want to add that both of them are healing, but especially him, because in my office, I typically work more so with, if it's individual sessions and then we have a little bit of couple here and there, I work with the avoidant more, right? And so the avoidant individual, we're going to say in this dynamic, he's working towards his own healing. He's working towards being less rigid. He's accepting himself more. He's more forgiving of himself. He's not as much of a perfectionist. So he's already healing a lot of those traits that you need to heal avoidant attachment, right? But maybe his partner is not so much in the anxious space, okay? So what ends up happening is let's look at it from the very beginning of their relationship, and then we'll kind of go into where they are right now. So this is an example, by the way. Let's say when they first started dating, let's say he's religious. In my area, Christianity is very common. So we're going to say Christian, okay? He's very religious. He doesn't want to... He's very picky with who he chooses. He may use it as a defense mechanism, kind of an excuse, denial, but he still has the faith very real. Like, he very much is Christian. So he attends his, ceremony on Sunday. We call it church, going to church. So he does those types of things. And she's not very religious at all, right? She's also had a lot of intimate connections before him. He not so much, because he's very choosy with who he lets in, because from a biblical standpoint, at least from what he believes, is that really you shouldn't be doing that with anyone unless you're married, right? And so he has those ingrained in him. Suddenly we see that she is now shifting from her prior personality to now leaning more into Christianity. This is a good thing, but what ends up happening is the dynamic is such an extreme shift, she lost who she really is. Instead of slowly cultivating a relationship based on that concept, because she's learning from him, she's actually trying to become more like him, which are two different things. And that's the start of how I know typically these individuals are going to start, more so the anxious preoccupied individual is going to start neglecting areas of her life. And eventually, if this is not managed, even if he's fully healed, he's going to probably pull away, because a lot of avoidant individuals, even if they heal the attachment issues, a lot of their personality is still a certain way, which I don't think is an issue. I appreciate that. I guess every therapist is different. I don't mind as long as as long as you allow yourself to commit and connect to people. I think it's okay. So it's very likely that he's still going to feel really suffocated and resentful once he realizes that a lot of her personality is not genuine, right? The other thing, let's say, for example, this gentleman comes from a more, like the state that I'm in, the northern part of it is a little bit more like less rooted to the actual state's culture, but the central and other parts of it tends to be much more Southern culture. And so you'll see a lot of those dynamics. So let's say she comes from the more northern part of the state, or any state, who cares, right? And so in this example, he actually has more roots of Southern culture. And so you start seeing her being more interested in Southern food. You start seeing her be more interested in, maybe she wants to go back to college and she's picking a more Southern leaning college. So you start seeing these types of behaviors. And what's happening is she's neglecting her own life. And he starts feeling uncomfortable because he feels like, first of all, she's not being her real self. So she's not adding to the relationship. So now he feels a little bit like there's too much center of attention on him and she's not genuine. And that makes him feel uncomfortable and sometimes unattracted. And the attraction dips very quickly. And what starts happening is he also starts to lose respect for her. And I know these are really harsh terms, but I really want to paint a picture of how often I see this. Like you guys would not have a clue how often I see this. And this is probably one of the most common reasons that an avoidant partner suddenly loses feelings, because their partner is not them anymore. The avoidant likes you for who you are. If they wanted someone like them, they would have chose someone like them. They chose you. So you're taking that away. So their feelings are also going away with it, because they like you, not the fake version of yourself. And the unfortunate part is anxious, preoccupied, and fearful avoidant who are leaning anxious, they don't think they're good enough, which is why they do that. So they don't actually realize my partner likes me for me, right? Like they like me. And so they feel so much like they're not worth it. And a lot of times, especially anxious, preoccupied, they put their partner on a pedestal. And so they think what their partner is the best. You know, this individual who is whatever they are, we gave this example, he's like Southern culture, he's Christian. So like she thinks that's the best, whereas maybe she's not as much that, but maybe she has other things, but she doesn't think that's good enough. So she's going to get rid of those things and become like him. And now he's feeling like this relationship isn't even genuine and his feelings are just dissipating. And that's really unfortunate, because it's such a simple thing to just make things a little bit more dynamic in the relationship. It's so simple, but people don't recognize how much this affects relationships. Another example is you start not talking to your friends anymore, right? So this is still neglecting other areas of your life. That one was like neglecting the emotional and internal, intrinsic parts of yourself, right? Neglecting other areas of your life emotionally. This one is more like obvious, right? You're not talking to your friends as much. You're not paying attention to your job as much, right? You're more detached from other things, and all you do is be with your partner. Unfortunately, I see this a lot where I want to say this in the most, I'm just going to say it and it might be confusing. Avoidant individuals, when they start healing, sometimes what ends up happening, which causes them to not fully heal, I'm not blaming the partner, I promise, but what happens is the partner becomes very they stop doing their own healing because they think that the relationship is going to be fine, and that pulls the avoidant away. So I'm going to give an example about neglecting areas of your life and, the loss of feelings. So let's say an avoidant individual, he dismissive avoidant male, anxious preoccupied female, just give an example. At first he only saw her once or twice a week, and he didn't want her to stay over, but he's healing and he knows that, I was just doing that because I'm avoiding letting her get close. So now his new strategy, let's say, I'm his therapist and we're working on trying to let other people in and just processing how it feels. And then we can process it in session without him running away, right? Like just a strategy. Let's try it for like a month, right? Let's just say that's the goal. And so he's been doing that. And then he realizes as we process it, I actually like my partner being there with me. I feel safe. I feel comfortable knowing I can wake up and she's there. I feel comfortable knowing she's coming to my house more often. It also motivates me to clean up a little bit more. She's cooking for me, so this is really great. And I realize I like this. So now he's kind of processed that and recognizes this is good. And so this is helpful for her as an anxious preoccupied. She's really excited, right? And she notices it's genuine on his part. But what ends up happening is she's neglecting other areas of her life. And so she's starting to go to his house like every day. Everything that happens. She gets into a fight with her sister. You know what? She's going to stay at his house. She doesn't want to be alone today because it's too hard. Or maybe she gets into a fight with her roommate. I don't want to stay here. I'm going to my boyfriend's. And so almost every day, she's finding some excuse to stay with him, which is it's sweet and it probably makes him feel very loved. But what ends up happening is he's starting to feel like almost suffocated by her because she has neglected other areas of her life. She's not trying to work on her conflict resolution skills with her roommate. She's not trying to talk it out with her sister. She's not trying to manage her own feelings of loneliness. And so he feels overly responsible, and that makes him pull away because often he's not doing the same thing. And so that dynamic shift starts making him feel like he hasn't healed enough. And that makes him feel discouraged because he was doing so well. And now, like he was doing well, he came closer to her, but what happened is she also came close and then he pulled away again. And so the dynamic is back to what it was in the beginning because she didn't back up as much. And so now he's feeling discouraged as well. So what ends up happening is his feelings become very suppressed and lost, and he starts losing respect for the relationship. And it's a very unfortunate feeling. Often when this happens, the avoidant himself or themselves denies it, which is why it feels like a sudden loss, right? The next one is their partner is critical of them. And so a critical conversation, even if it's not directly being critical towards them, it can be like a feeling where the avoidant individual feels like whatever they do is wrong. That's kind of the atmosphere that's starting to happen in their relationship in general, right? Let's say, I don't know, even if it has nothing to do with the actual relationship. I work with a lot of couples, like long-term couples, married couples. So it might even be like household chores. You never put the plate back in the dishwasher. How much times do I always tell you, you're so messy. It's so frustrating. I really wish I lived with someone who was less messy. Like, men are so dirty, right? Or it could be like anything. Like, you get your hair. I hear this a lot. You get your hair all over the shower because women have long hair typically. And he might be like, women are so lazy, something. And these are so negative terms that's making the avoidant individual feel so critical, right? So criticized, so unloved. And what ends up happening is they feel like they don't belong in this relationship anymore. And sometimes it just happens very quickly where they start realizing, wait a second, like, why am I even putting up with this? Like, I don't like this person anymore. And that really hurts. That really hurts. But it's very important for you guys to recognize if you're doing this, it's not necessarily your fault because it's your own attachment issue as well, typically, right? And so I don't want you to sit there and tell yourself, I did all these horrible things. What's wrong with me? No, the avoidant partner should have mentioned these things. That's part of why this happens more commonly with avoidant individuals, because if this was a secure partner, because all of this happens with a secure and anxious dynamic as well, but the secure partner does something that the avoidant partner doesn't do, and that's that they speak up. Hey, I've noticed our boundaries are getting a lot more crossed. I'm starting to feel like it's affecting how I feel about you. I really think we need to set those boundaries again, because otherwise I feel like this relationship may struggle and I don't want to lose you. A secure person will say that. The avoidant person feels that way, but they don't say it. And so they let it erode, and that affects their feelings, right? So I don't want you to blame yourself, because the avoidant has a responsibility as well, and that's to tell you, okay? And the next one, he's pressuring them to change. A lot of avoidant individuals, they do need to heal. And if they don't heal, the relationship may not do as well. And a lot of people know that. And so it's very common that their partner will pressure them to change. But by pressuring them to, instead of promoting them to, is very different. So pressuring will be, I know it doesn't sound like it, but it's like sending them an article about, I don't know, how childhood neglect creates detachment in relationships, right? Which is true, but it's not clear. It makes them feel like you're criticizing them and judging them. Rather, you can promote them and say, I know that you're not very emotional, and I know you're trying. And yesterday when we went to that party, you kissed me on the cheek, and then you opened the car door for me, and that made me feel very loved by you, and I really appreciate that. To me, that shows me that you are pretty open to, connecting with me. And I think that's a good sign of change. What do you think? That's promoting them. That's helping them and letting them learn, this is a safe space. I'm loved no matter what. And I'm seen, right? And the next one, unfortunately, this is a very true experience that happens with avoidant individuals. And this one, no matter what you do, the avoidant individual has to step up with this one, more particularly. All of them, but especially this one. Honestly, sometimes it's because their feelings got too intense for you. Like they like you too much. And I know it sounds really annoying because that sounds so backwards, and it is. But it is because as they like you, they're more emotional towards you, and they suppress their emotions. So automatically what happens is, because they have such a surplus of emotions, what they have done subconsciously, they always do this. They've done this ever since childhood. Any surplus of emotions, they suppress it. So the surplus of the depth of the emotion they have towards you, their automatic response is to suppress it. So they have suppressed their feelings of love for you. I know that is very unfortunate. It really is. But yes, that does happen. It happens more than you probably recognize. However, I will say, I have seen this happen in relationships. It usually happens around the 2 to 3 year mark. And what happens is, if the partner lets them process it while still continuing the consistent dynamic in the relationship, the avoidant individual will start processing the feelings and they don't run away. Now, if the partner starts asking them too much about it or picking on it, that's when the emotions become even more overwhelming, and then they run away. But usually what happens is, if you let them process it by themselves, that doesn't mean they're going to, just not talk to you or ghost you. That's not what I'm saying, but just continue the relationship dynamic it's always been. Nothing more, nothing less, no additional time spent, but also not less time. The avoidant individual typically will work these things out subconsciously by themselves, actually, and these feelings will resurface later. So it's not a lost cause, okay? And the last one, this one is very unfortunate, but to be honest, this is not just avoidant individuals. It's, how do I even say it? Like a mismatch of values. Yeah, I guess like different goals, like a mismatch in values and goals, I guess is the best way I'll put it for now. It's like basically them realizing you two are just different people and you might be on different paths. Like, it's hard for them to see that you will fit in their life because they want to go to A, you want to go to B. And that just makes them feel like they can't go to B for you and you can't go to A for them. And that's what makes them feel like, I don't want to feel the pain of losing you when we're both much further along our separate paths, and then we have to break up and I have to lose you. So they suppress their feelings so they don't feel the love for you because they're afraid. And it's not a normal response, but it's understandable, at least from my perspective, because they do it because they like you and love you. And I do want to mention, most of these aspects may not actually be suddenly. It just looks sudden because a lot of it was largely subconscious. And it only became prominent when they actually accepted what was really happening. Avoidant individuals, sometimes they don't understand their feelings. So they just let feelings swim around in their brain for a really long time without knowing what's going on. And then one day it just hits them. And that's what happens. That's why it feels like they suddenly lost feelings, right? And so how do we avoid this? How do we avoid an avoidant individual suddenly losing feelings? Well, the summary is you really can't. If it happens, it happens. However, how can we decrease that opportunity? I will explain that, because everyone's different. If we could predict everything, I don't even know what life would be. That's just not true. Even research such as like predicting divorce, our highest is like, I think 93%. Like, I've never seen something where it's like 100% we can like stop this. Like, it's not possible, right? There's always room for error. But can we avoid this pretty strongly to the point where the percentage of it happening is very low? Yes, very low. And I'm going to go talk about it with you. The first one is working towards interdependence instead of codependency or any sort of abnormal leaning towards any sort of dependency, even independent, right? We want to do interdependence. That means a consistent connection where you two trust each other and have this dynamic without having any extreme highs and lows. So it's never going to be, we had mentioned an example earlier where it's like we had this anxious, preoccupied individual where as soon as her partner became more leaning towards her, she started leaning way heavily into the relationship. She, stopped talking to her friends. She stopped communicating with her roommates and just always with him all the time. That created the interdependence decreasing. And so it's now more codependent. So we want to look at it as if both individuals, when we're looking at it from an outside perspective, almost like from a therapist perspective, we are seeing two individuals who are also in a relationship. So the way I like to look at it is there's three aspects that I have to treat as a therapist, right? Person A, person B, and the relationship, right? We want to make sure it looks like that. We never want it to be where person A and B is just stuck and there's only one thing and that's just the relationship. You want to be able to see all three of these aspects. So in the relationship, maybe they always have a movie night. That's interdependence. But we also know maybe person A works at a car dealership and person B works at the dentist's office. So we know these things that are separate. We can see they are separate and that's important, but they also have time together. Always remember that interdependence in general helps all relationships. You can almost never go wrong with this one. No matter what your dynamic is, if you implement this, you can very well heal a lot of the issues in your relationship. I love this one. It works so good. The next one is communicate clearly without being critical. I will also probably add actionable steps considering avoidant individuals struggle with this one. So instead of saying, I feel so lonely in this relationship, you can say, I was wondering if before bed we could, let's say you guys are a couple that lives together and sleeps in the same bed. I was wondering if before bed we could kiss each other goodnight every night. How do you feel about that? Two different, they're the same feeling, but one is an actionable step. So communicate clearly without being critical. Very important. The next one is be patient with yourself and each other. Being patient is very important. Relationships are extremely dynamic and so many problems and issues can come up you would never guess. I have seen things about relationships as a therapist that I would have never guessed if I had not been in this profession. It's just so unique. So many little things that you can never ever predict these things, at least not 100% accurate. So please be patient with one another. You never know what demons your partner is battling. They might not even know. So just be gentle with yourselves and each other. And the very last one, respect each other's timelines, your own timelines, set boundaries as needed while communicating, and find a middle ground. And that was a lot of words in one sentence. So the shortcut is always try and find some way where you yourself can adjust and your partner can adjust. It's not always easy. It's not always going to be clean. Sometimes you're going to be the one adjusting more. And that's okay, because maybe 2 years down the line, they're going to be adjusting more. And yes, I do see that. It's not healthy to keep score. This relationship is both of yours. To fight for it, sometimes you got to do things you never expected you had to do. And I wish there was an easier way to put it. But I do want you guys to have healthy relationships. That's actually why I make these videos, okay? I hope this was helpful. Please subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next one.